Hey, what's going on, you guys? This video is part 3 in my series about how to become an electrician. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you advice in how to absolutely destroy your interview. But not like this. Alright, well, if you guys are here watching this video today, it's probably because you have an interview in the near future. And I know what you're probably wondering. Did I get all dressed up just for you? Yes. Yes, I did. Alright, well, hey you guys, in all seriousness, my name is Steven, and this is my YouTube channel, Mad Electrician. Now, my goal with this series I'm going through right now is to just help walk you guys through the steps that you need to take to become an electrician. My last video, if you guys watched it, was about taking your aptitude test. I hope that you found that helpful, and in today's video, we're going to go in depth of how to do a really good job at taking your interview. So as always, I just want to say that this video today, of course, is going to be specific to my experience here in Portland, Oregon with ibew Local 48. Now, if you live in another state and you're applying for a different local union, just know that the interview process may be slightly different, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty similar. And of course, if you're applying for the non-union, well, it's probably going to look pretty different, but for the most part, these tips and tricks that I'm going to give you guys today are going to also apply to that as well. So I think that a good way to start this video off today would be by kind of just giving you guys a quick overview of what this interview process is actually going to look like. This is going to be pretty different than any other interview that you've probably ever had in your life, and it's arguably going to be the most important interview that you're probably ever going to have. So I hope this video helps out. Anyways, so after you've taken your aptitude test, you're going to get a letter in the mail that's, one, going to congratulate you on passing, and two, it's going to have the specific date and time that you need to show up to the training center to take your interview. So you're going to show up the day of with your portfolio, and later on I'll explain what that portfolio is going to have in it, but you're going to show up with your portfolio, you're going to go and sign in, and then you are going to be assigned to a specific classroom where you're going to be interviewed. So you're going to wait in line because there's going to probably be a lot of people in front of you. And when it's finally your turn, you're going to walk into that classroom and you're going to start your interview. Now, this is where the interview might seem a little scary, especially if you weren't expecting this. So when you walk into the classroom, you'll notice right away that it's not just one person interviewing you, it's a whole panel of people that are interviewing you. So you're going to have basically 3 to 6 people that are there in that classroom sitting in kind of a U formation around you, and you're going to be right in the center. Okay, and once you sit down, the interesting thing is they are not going to be the ones asking you the questions. You are going to be the one asking yourself the questions. Okay, so on the table in front of you, there's going to be a piece of paper that has each of the interview questions. And I want to say there's normally 3 questions. That's how many I had when I was interviewed. So you're going to read the questions out loud. You're going to answer those to the best of your ability. And then after you're done answering the questions, the interview committee, they are going to maybe ask you some questions about your answers. And once that is all done, then they are going to dismiss you and you're going to go home, and you're hopefully going to feel really good about your interview because you're going to have done a really awesome job. So like I mentioned before in my previous videos, the training center is going to have thousands of applicants that apply every single year to be a part of this apprenticeship. So it's really important that when you take your interview, you're going to stand out amongst everybody else, and you're going to show them exactly why they need to pick you for this apprenticeship. So my first bit of advice that I would give you before even getting to the point of taking your interview is to do exactly what you're doing right now, and that is to do your research. So when I say do your research, this is basically what I mean. Whether you're applying for the union or the non-union, I think that this is a really important thing to do. You're going to want to learn what the ins and outs of the company or the local union are and exactly what they have to offer, right? So if you're applying for the union, then you're going to want to know what the wages are. maybe what the pensions have to offer. You're going to want to know some major projects that the local union has worked on, or the company that you're applying for. And if you're applying for the union, you're going to maybe want to know what some of the major companies are that work with that union. And then a couple of really big ones that are going to really make you stand out if you can memorize these and incorporate them into your answers when you're doing your interview would be, what is the mission statement of the union or company, and what are the core values? If you can memorize those, then oh my goodness, you are going to stand out. So once you've spent a considerable amount of time doing your research on either the company or local union that you're applying for, well, then you're going to want to start thinking about how you're going to answer the interview questions. Now, of course, you're not going to know exactly what the questions are that you're going to be asked, but I can give you a pretty good idea of at least 2 questions that you can expect. And whether they're exactly asked this way or a variation of these questions, this is probably what you can expect. So the first question is going to be, why do you want to be an electrician? And the second question is going to be, why should we choose you? Now, if you're anything like me, when you're in a high stress situation, much like a job interview, you may have a hard time answering questions on the spot, or at least answers that you can be proud of. And so I'm going to let you know a bit of advice that worked really well for me, and I'm going to recommend that you do this too. So when I was preparing for my interview and I did my research and I had an idea of what the interview questions were going to be, this is what I would do. So at the time I worked for AT&T, and basically when there were no other customers in the store or no other employees, what I would do is I would take my phone out, I would set it on the table, and I would open up the voice recorder app. And basically what I would do is I would just spend every single moment that I could without anybody in the store recording my answers out loud to the interview questions. I probably looked crazy if anybody were to look back at the security footage, just me talking to myself in the store all the time, but it worked out really well. And basically, since I did that, when I actually eventually got to take my interview, I was really lucky because the 2 questions that I spent time answering over and over again were actually questions that I was asked on my interview. And yeah, my answer may have sounded slightly robotic, but I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and I felt really good and confident after my interview. Now, this next bit of advice is probably going to be the best advice that I give you in this whole video. So I really want you guys to take advantage of this, okay? So what I would absolutely do if I were you, and this is what I did, is before you actually go and take your interview, you're going to want to call the training center for the local union that you are applying for, and you're going to want to set up a mock interview. So a mock interview is awesome, and this is what my experience was like with it, and this is why I would recommend it. So basically, I called the training center a week or so before my real interview, and I let them know, hey, I really want to get as much practice in as I can before I do my real interview. Can I schedule a mock interview with you guys? And of course, you know, this is something that they actually do all the time. So they said, yeah, you can come in on this day and time, and you'll have an interview with this person, which ended up being one of the office ladies. And so the day of, I showed up early, and I even dressed up just like it was the real thing. I went back into the office, and I basically had an interview. And here's why it was so valuable, you guys, is one, it gave me a chance to practice my interview answers in front of an actual person that worked for the training center. I got actual feedback on my answers, maybe things that I should say and things that I shouldn't say. I basically got to see exactly what the interview questions were going to be, which, again, because I did my research, I kind of already knew, but this just reinforced that. And one thing I think that I got really lucky with is the lady that actually did my mock interview was one of the ladies that was on the interview panel when I did my real interview. So she knew as soon as I walked into the room, she recognized me, and I could tell. And I'm convinced that she knew that I was so serious about wanting to get into this apprenticeship. I'm sure that she gave me a great score, and it's one of the reasons why I got in. Now, there's one last thing that I'm going to really recommend that you guys spend some time on before you actually go and take your interview, and that is getting your portfolios ready. So I mentioned these portfolios earlier, and this is basically what they are. So when you show up to your interview, you're going to be able to give a portfolio to each person that is on the interview committee. And basically in this portfolio, it's basically a folder. You're going to have these documents. Okay, you're going to have a cover letter, you're going to have a resume, you're going to have a number of letters of recommendations from previous employers or people that have worked with you in the past. And then ibew Local 48 lets you also include pictures and descriptions of projects or jobs that you have worked on beforehand, basically just things that you want the interview committee to see. So for me, I had never worked on any construction projects before, but I did make my wife a table for Christmas one year. It turned out really good, so I put a picture of that in there. I have spent some time working on electronics. I learned how to make my own guitar pedals at one point. So I took a picture of one of those and put that in there. And then also some community service that I had done. So put anything at all that you want the interview committee to see. Make sure that these are really nice and buttoned up, and that you feel proud when you get to hand each of those portfolios to the interviewers at the time of your interview. So that pretty much covers all of the prep work that you need to do before the day of your interview. But now the day is here. Now this is the real deal. And just like your aptitude test and your mock interview, you're going to want to show up nice and early to the actual interview. And I mean like at least a half hour early, okay? You want to make sure that you eliminate any possibility of being late because of traffic. And then of course you just also want to show up early enough to kind of let your nerves simmer down. You're going to sign in. Also of course beforehand, you're going to want to make sure that you are nice and dressed up. Now, you don't need to wear like a full-on suit or anything, but you are competing against thousands of people that apply for this apprenticeship. And it's really important that you show that you want this, not only by the things that you say, but also by what you're wearing. I remember when I actually went to take my interview, there were lots of guys that showed up in like Carhartt pants and dirty, shirts with paint on them and whatnot. And I mean that, it just doesn't show that you're really serious about wanting to get in. Yeah, maybe that's what you look like day to day on the job, but this is an interview. I mean, you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself in a way that is professional and presenting yourself in a way that shows that you are serious about wanting this as a career. So when I had my interview, I was actually the very last person that they interviewed on that day. And I remember sitting outside of the room, being nervous and kind of going over all of the answers in my head. And basically, I just remember hearing, the door was closed, but I could hear the interview committee just laughing and joking around with each other. And I thought to myself, hey, these guys are in a good mood. Maybe this won't be so bad. And so eventually, one of the guys came out of the room and he said, hey, Steven, all right, come on in, you're last. And it took a little bit of a chance, but I walked in the room and I said, hey, best for last. And thankfully they liked it. I tried to show a little bit of personality, and they laughed, and honestly it kind of just alleviated some of the tension. But anyways, I went around, shook everybody's hands, and then I gave each of the interviewers the portfolio, and then I sat down and I started my interview. So like I said, the first question that was asked of me, or I guess that I asked myself, is why do you want to become an electrician? And I think basically what they were looking for in the answer was the fact that you don't want just another job, that you're not just trying this out because it sounds cool, but that you actually want to do this because you want a career, right? And that you're genuinely interested in this. So that's where doing all of the research beforehand on exactly what an electrician is going to be really important. The second question was, why should we choose you? And I was actually really happy with the way that I answered this, and this was my approach. So basically what I said is, anybody can come in here and tell you that I would be the best fit for this apprenticeship. And I said, well, most people will say that, but I can actually prove it to you. And so since I had given everybody a portfolio, I said, if you go ahead and open up the portfolio I gave you and go to my resume, you'll see that every single job that I've ever had in my past, within a short amount of time, I was quickly promoted to a position of leadership. And I said, what that shows you is that the employers trusted me and that I did such a good job that they put me in a position of leadership. You know, and then I went on to tell them about some achievements that I had as a store manager at AT&T. And I think that was good because I basically proved to them, yeah, that I would be a good candidate for this. And even though I didn't have any real electrical experience beforehand, I told them that, you know, my motivation and my character and all that I had in any previous jobs and my integrity, that I would bring that over and that I would just give, you know, my 100% best effort into this apprenticeship and doing this as a career. So one thing that the interview committee did do after I answered all of the questions is they asked me some of their own questions, right? They wanted to know basically what my hobbies were outside of work. They also wanted to know if I had any experience with power tools or anything. And again, I was able to refer them to my portfolio with community service that I had done and the desk that I made for my wife. But I think it was a really good experience overall. And to be honest, just like the aptitude test, the interview went by really, really fast. And I honestly couldn't believe that I was already done by the time that it was finished. And, you know, at the very end of my interview, I got up and shook everybody's hands and said, thank you so much. And that I was looking forward to hearing back from them. And I got up and I walked out and I went home, and I just remember driving on my way home feeling honestly really confident. And I called my brother and I called my wife and my parents. I called a lot of people and I just let them all know, I think I did really good and I think I'm gonna get this. And luckily for me, I did. I ranked in the low 60s, and I was actually starting the apprenticeship within just a few short months after my interview. Now let's say that after your interview, you get your score back, and unfortunately, it's not a score that you were hoping for. You know, it's a bummer, but again, that's not the end of the world, just like with the aptitude test, because you can actually apply to be re-interviewed. And from what I hear, most people actually interview 2, 3, sometimes even like 4 times. So it's not the end of the world. It does happen to a lot of people. Basically, what you're going to need to do within that 6-month period where you have to wait to be re-interviewed is you're going to maybe want to take a college class on electrical theory, or maybe get a job in construction or as a material handler like I talked about in my last video. Because what you want to do is show that you're a better applicant and that you're really serious about wanting to get into this as a trade. When you come back after 6 months and you re-interview and you can show them, look, this is what I did in the last 6 months in order to make myself a better applicant, well, chances are you're going to get a much better rank because it's going to show the training center that you're really serious about wanting this as a career. All right, well, I think that is it, you guys. Again, I really appreciate you sticking around this long. Make sure you smash that like button and then also subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date with any future videos that I release. My goal is to release one video about once a week. And then last but not least, if you have an Instagram, make sure that you follow me at Mad Electrician Official. I hope that you guys have a fantastic 4th of July and have a great rest of your day.